John Florence, and I'm Senior Vice President of Marketing here at E4 Insurance Services, and I'm welcoming you to another edition of The Brew, where we build relationships every week. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you joining The Brew for the first time, welcome. We'd like to start this brewcast, as we do every week, with today's national days. So here's some news that's likely to shake you up. You may not have known it, but today is National Richter Scale Day, where we honor the birth of the Richter scale inventor, Mr. Charles Richter, in the year 1900. Fun fact, the biggest earthquake ever measured was in Chile in 1960, and it was 9.5 on the 10-point scale. Yet to see a 10-point earthquake. Hopefully we never will. Today is also National Audubon Day. We celebrate the birth of John James Audubon, the celebrated French-American ornithologist, whose famous book, The Birds of America, set the benchmark for all other books about birds ever to come afterwards. It was first published in 1827. It's the single most important book on birds that was ever written. It's also the most expensive book in the world. In 2013, the first edition of his book sold at auction for $11.5 million. And lastly, today is National Pretzel Day. Whether you prefer the small, crunchy kind that are chocolate coated or the really large, soft ones with cheese and mustard, today is a great day for you to go out and enjoy a pretzel. So on today's brew, we welcome one of our perennial favorite guests, Tiffany Markarian, who is the founder and director of Advantus Marketing. Tiffany has joined us on several brewcasts, as well as being the keynote speaker at several of our E4 events, including our upcoming Building Business Together, which is coming up a week from tomorrow on May the 4th. On today's brew, Tiffany is going to share with us a little bit about centers of influence and what's changing in the influence game and how to build a COI program into your business. Feel free to use the chat box to share your thoughts or ask questions. Also, all attendees are in a drawing for a CE voucher and a Starbucks gift card. We will be announcing the winner at the end. Tiffany, welcome back to The Brew. It's so great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see all of you as well. Looking forward to next week.
I know, it's going to be excited. Are you going to come in costume?
I'm going to maybe have some buns on my head. Being Princess Leia, you don't know.
Well, we'll just have to see. So it's great. It's really nice to have you back again. And we always look forward to the nuggets that you're sharing with us on how to build better financial and advisory types of practices. And today I know you wanted to talk a little bit about centers of influence. So why don't we kick it off? And if you don't mind, just share with us, first of all, I mean, there might be some people who don't really fully understand what exactly is a center of influence.
Absolutely. A center of influence, or a COI for short, it's basically who can get you exposure to the type of clients you're trying to build, whether that's a referral relationship, co-marketing, or just basic warm introductions into a niche market. From a social media standpoint, a lot of people call them influencers. But from the standpoint of a financial advisor, it's a professional network relationship where you can favorably and most expectedly mutually refer each other or give each other opportunities and exposure into a marketplace.
Okay, so traditionally, who would those kinds of people be, to a financial practitioner?
Traditionally, and still today, a financial advisor may have a relationship with an estate attorney. And obviously the opportunity there is funding trusts or helping them with insurance needs and estate planning, et cetera. It could also be a CPA, again, referring each other for mutual needs. Property and casualty is another. Those are the three common traditional, and they're still viable today. But also remember that there's a lot more competition today. Many CPAs are now licensed, affiliated with broker-dealers. Many property and casualty firms have aligned formally with benefits and HR and financial services within their practice. And it's also just competitive space. It's likely that an estate attorney may not just have one exclusive relationship. They may have relationships with many advisors. But I think it's important to look beyond the traditional, because in the traditional space, for every 10 professionals that you meet, only one or two might be the right fit. Because remember, there's only so many clients you can refer. There's only so much marketing and capacity that somebody has to affiliate with multiple parties. But if you look beyond, and you should still, again, seek to get the traditional relationships, but maybe you're trying to get into the divorce market and everybody automatically thinks, all right, we need to align with divorce attorneys. And certainly you should network within them. You should make yourself known within that section of the bar association. But if you're trying to get to divorcees or those planning for divorce, the non-traditional centers of influence, again, your influencers, might be the people who run the meetup groups. It might be the people who run a podcast that could give you opportunities to share your content or exposure. These meetup groups run events, social events, educational events. They're looking for content. If you're trying to get, say, to a multicultural community, then chambers of commerce, typically, a lot of them might be saturated if they're for a specific town or city, but those that cater to a specific cultural organization or ethnic group, they tend to have significant influence, and they're looking to bring value to that specific cultural organization. Heads of associations as well might be great centers of influence. If you're trying to get to, say, millennials or Gen Zs as a client base, then the urban professionals networks, the young professionals networks are always looking for content to build leadership, to build opportunities.
So you've talked a little bit about the traditional, and you talked about expanding to some of those things that maybe aren't the first things that come to mind when you think of COIs. What about, is there anything as far as the way advisors could maybe address some of the generational shift that we're seeing? If you're trying to attract, say maybe the millennials or the Gen Zs into a practice, are there different kinds of COIs that you might look at in that kind of a situation?
It would. So let's say you have a firm that allows you to co-market. Again, some broker dealers have some restrictions, right? They're going to make sure that whoever you affiliate with, they're going to want to see due diligence. What is their brand? Is it something that you would be comfortable aligning with? Are they very controversial, right? Are they very opinionated on their social media? Once you cross that threshold, if they allow you to talk about your professional network, some broker dealers, again, make sure that you have to introduce to 3 professionals in one discipline, right? So it doesn't look like you're endorsing. But let's say you cross that and you're used to doing, say, virtual meetings, virtual seminars, you speak at different events, then bring in a younger CPA or a younger divorce attorney or a younger, say, psychologist if you're in the divorce or widows market. Bringing in someone younger makes that look like they're part of your network and part of your team that you can introduce to clients. If you're of a certain age and not really relating well, then the interns that you bring in, ask them to help beef up your social media, ask them to do some research on some of the young professionals groups, the young societies for young attorneys. They're out there. And those might be the non-traditional relationships. The other thing that I would suggest is a lot of us look for retirees or well-established clients. But remember, the future dentists, right? The future CPAs, a lot of times are coming out of the colleges. So start speaking to the graduating classes on personal finance. Or if you're a property and casualty advisor, on the things that they need to protect, because many are going to start to buy into practices or take over practices. So just a few ways. Have someone help you with the research, and then establish ways to co-market together, which I know we're going to touch on.
Wow. So yeah, you're talking about co-marketing, and this is really different than how maybe I have thought about COIs. I guess when I think of COIs, I'm generally kind of thinking about networking, right? I'm getting out and I'm going to the various associations and kinds of organizational meetings, and a place to kind of rub shoulders and shake hands with other people who are like professionals. But you're talking about something really bigger than that, almost like a formalized program, if I'm hearing you right. So how does a person get, if they were going to put a COI program in place in their practice? How do you get that off the ground? What are you talking about?
It starts with the networking, right? Because that's how you're going to meet the people. And you better be very tight with your value proposition. right? If someone says, well, what do you do? And you say, well, I focus on insurance planning, investment planning, financial planning, they're going to be like, I got to go meet my wife, and they're not even married, right? So you
Like
have to
saying I'm
be
a
very,
mammal.
yeah, so you have to be very clear, or my spouse or significant other, you have to be very clear what business owners say I do for them is, or what my divorce clients say I do for them is, speak in outcomes. So the co-marketing, you have to meet the people first. So that's where the networking comes in, right? What are the organizations, groups, clubs, where they are? You had mentioned that traditionally, most people think of COIs as networking. Actually, I think most advisors would agree, they're hoping that it's a referral relationship. That, oh, I got a client for you, I got a client for you. That's great, but we're not thinking about how do we give each other opportunities every day when we come in the office. And that's where, if we've got a relationship, they've passed our due diligence, they have a process that aligns with ours, non-competing services, then we say, okay, because we're not thinking of each other on a daily basis, then the co-marketing might start with something like this. I have some events coming up. I've done some pre-approval with my compliance department on some of your content. I would love you to come in and speak on these 3 topics as part of my workshop, because a lot of these COIs aren't marketing specialists either. So if you give them marketing opportunities, they would invite their clients to hear the content, whether it's virtual or in person. You do the same thing. Maybe we co-market on a Social Security or Medicare workshop, right? Something confusing that a lot of people don't have answers to. If I'm doing a blog and I get some heavy traction with it, maybe I ask them to contribute a guest article, or I quote them in that article, they get some exposure. These are the types of things that if we activate marketing opportunities, then they're more apt to refer us. The other thing is this: why people don't often refer is because they don't know how to bring it up. So if I'm a financial advisor and I'm working with a property and casualty firm, we know that they're going to go through some type of performance review with their commercial clients. I would say add these 3 questions about buy, sell, key person, business continuity. And if the answers are no, I don't really have that, now we have an opportunity. If I'm working with a CPA, and this particular CPA, I would say to them, do you have any clients that have inherited IRAs or inherited money, and now they have to start taking those RMDs, but they don't need the money? Maybe we start asking questions such as, do you have intentions or desires to provide for grandchildren for education? Or are you concerned about future health care? These RMDs that we don't need could be repurposed. So if you give them scenarios that they're going to work on a regular basis, that's like, I can bring extra value to my client.
Yeah.
And same thing with the non-traditional COIs. Let's say the urban young professionals, they may not know enough about personal finance. They don't think they're wealthy enough to get a financial advisor, but how can I avoid the common mistakes? These might be content that you can share. You give them scenarios of things that they run into often, but show them how to bring it up. Secondly, to kick off the co-marketing or referrals, I would also, and I do this with advisors all the time, do you have a template email that they can use when they want to introduce you to someone? Rather than, we've got a specialist who works in this area, I suggest you give them a call. Allow me to introduce John Florence, David. That's not really going to go anywhere, but something to say, what John does for our clients is X, and he solves these areas. This is something that's important for you to take care of in our work together. I'm going to have John give you a call.
This sounds like, this sounds very proactive. It sounds like you're almost coming into an agreement with another person, and or different groups of people, depending on how many centers of influence you have that you're looking to work with, but really kind of coming up with a proactive plan together. Is that really what you're talking about?
It is, because you meet someone, you have coffee, hey, it sounds great, you could bring a lot of value to my clients, and then it's crickets. They're often waiting for someone to take the lead. And I usually suggest that you have a template 90-day launch plan. And that's going to basically say, all right, how are we going to engage? We need to have some type of email introduction to our clients that we are here and available. Now, again, we got to get through compliance if you're with a broker dealer, et cetera, but it's worth it. We might have a page on their website that says resources that you can tap into. We have an opportunity to say, okay, how might we look at the clients that are most viable? I would suggest that if I'm going to be doing work in the area, we're both local, we both work out of Fargo, we both work out of Minneapolis, have a local day that maybe you work out of their office for the afternoon. We're not talking an office of supervisory jurisdiction. It's just, I'm going to be just responding to emails. I'm going to be taking a few calls and so forth. But if I'm there once a week, then as the team at that firm is there, okay, I know John's coming in on Thursday afternoons. I've got a few questions, or just the fact that I'm visible. I'm at the coffee machine. I'm walking down the hallway. Hey, I've got a question. Hey, what cases are you working on this week? It just facilitates. So someone has to take the lead. It usually needs to be us.
Yeah, it sounds really great. It sounds intentional. It sounds like it requires effort, but probably something that could really pay off for both sides of the equation, right? I think the other thing that maybe happens is we tend to think of centers of influence as something that's really good for me, but it's really a two-way street, right? It's got to be good for the other person that's involved in this as well. It means that you need to be referring back to them, I would imagine.
Correct. And that you said a nugget in there that I want to bring back in. You talked about having multiple relationships and capacity. There's only so much capacity to do these types of things that we're talking about, taking the lead, co-marketing. If you've got an attorney and a CPA and a property and casualty and a few key influencers in some niche markets, that's probably enough. So that's why for every 10 people you meet, traditionally, only 1 or 2 might have the capacity, may not be saturated with other relationships, and have a close enough relationship to do this. So do we want to just skim the surface and hope others will refer us, or go deep and wide with a few key relationships and really make an impact?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So the other thing that comes to mind as I think about this is, we're all bombarded all the time with messages from every channel that you can even conceive, whether it's social or your email or, the phone ringing off the hook. How, as you're building a co-marketing COI plan together, how do you get the visibility? And, talk about that a little bit. How do we get attention?
You get attention by having something that they can do that's a payoff for them. So like I mentioned with your CPA clients, if you know that every quarter they're doing their business tax preparations for their business clients, what are some of the key things that they could be looking for? As I mentioned, having an afternoon once a week in their office, or at the very least, every 2 weeks, having a standing meeting. Maybe it's 11 a.m. to 11:30, just a quick conference call to talk about opportunities. If you're both going after the same niche market, that's even better. And typically, if you're networking, say, with builders and contractors, or you're networking with an anesthesiology association, and you're both part of it, you know that that association is going to have key events coming up. And they're going to have a platform where they have blogs or briefings or so forth. I would have a standing meeting every 2 weeks. What's coming up in the next quarter, right? We have to take that lead, whether that's a regular conference call, regular times in their office, to stay visible. And again, if you have a presence digitally with either video marketing, like you're doing with the BREW, or blogs, then look for ways that you can bring them in a compliant fashion. But the more they get a taste of marketing opportunities, the more they're going to be thinking of you. It takes some forethought. It takes us as advisors or property and casualty specialists to be very clear on the markets we want to go after so that we can bring others along. The alternative is just meeting for coffee every quarter. Hey, what cases are you working on? And that's fine, but it sort of leaves you, this isn't really getting traction.
I really love the intentional approach that you're bringing to it. And I can't help but think that this would just be a really tremendous way for for both sides of the equation to be able to grow their respective businesses. Thank you so much for sharing. Tiffany, is there any other things that you care to mention on the topic of COIs before we move to see who our winner is today?
Oh, a winner, absolutely. I would just say this, that it is worth doing, having a professional network, but not really having a plan for where you want this to go. If the plan is, I hope they refer me clients, that's fine, but hope is not a plan, right? If you know, I want to work with business owners, I want to work with construction professionals, I want to work with divorcees, I want to work with parents with children that have special needs, right? Then we have to think through, okay, I would rather find a center of influence from within those markets because we're both motivated to have success in that marketplace. That's where you really start. Everything to me starts with niche marketing. What type of clients are you trying to go after? That's going to craft your brand. It's going to craft who we should be speaking with, which centers of influence we want to have in our corner. And again, if they're a really significant center of influence, like the head of the Autism Society or the head of the Cerebral Palsy Society, they're already going to be bringing value to their parents and their members. They're going to have a platform. We can align with that platform. But the goal, like you said, is not to be me, me, me. How can I angle a sale out of this? It's how can I be a resource to you? Here's some content I have that would bring value to your members.
Right. Bringing true value. That's the key.
Being a resource, right.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. This has really been a great session with you today. Listen, while we're waiting to see if there are any final questions, I'd like to remind everybody that today's Brew and our full library of brewcasts are recorded and shared on the Brew blog on our website at www.e4.insurance. Now, Tiffany, we've got a giveaway of a CE card and Starbucks gift card. Sorry, it's not Dunkin' Donuts, but it's Starbucks. It'll do. So pick a number between 1 and 20, please.
I'm going to go 13.
13. Lucky 13. That was my birthday. Our winner today is Stephen Ellsworth. So Stephen, congratulations. Be on the lookout for our complimentary voucher and the gift card that'll be coming your way from all of us here at E4 Insurance Services. Let me just check and see if there are any further questions. I don't see anything in the box, so we'll move on. And join us next week. We will be welcoming Principal's Vice President of Business Solutions, Mason McKinney. Will be joining us on the Brew. And Mason's going to be identifying executive benefit gaps for key employees and discussing solutions to help business owners. That'll be next week on the Brew. Now, before you go, Tiffany, we're so excited. Those tuning in or even to the recording afterwards may know next week we are doing our annual BBT Building Business Together meeting, and Tiffany is going to be one of the keynote speakers at that event. So we're excited to have her there. And you know, I don't know, I'm still hoping you're going to come dressed up as Yoda. It's a Star Wars theme because it's on May the 4th. So if you get the reference, May the 4th be with you. We're going to be having a lot of fun there. We're looking forward to Tiffany's presentation there. So
thank you so much. As always, it's a pleasure. Good to see you all.
Yep. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week on the Brew.